This guy driving the Zamboni might look like just another worker at the arena. Someone who shows up before the crowd, makes sure the ice is perfect, and then disappears before anyone remembers his name. He's not wearing pads. He's not getting cheered. Most fans in the building wouldn't even know his face, but he's not who you think. Because on one unbelievable night in the NHL, this man didn't just drive the Zamboni. He made history on the very same ice he used to clean. His name is David Ayres. He was 42 years old, married, living a normal life in Ontario, and far away from the spotlight. He wasn't a pro athlete. He wasn't on an NHL roster. In fact, he wasn't on any roster. He worked behind the scenes at the rink, helped out with practice when someone needed a body in net, and most nights he just made sure the ice was smooth enough for the stars to shine. But when the Carolina Hurricanes suddenly found themselves with no goalie left in the middle of a real NHL game, David, a guy who hadn't played a competitive game in years, got the call. They told him to get dressed. No one, and I mean no one, expected him to last more than a few minutes on that ice. He hadn't played pro. He hadn't trained like the others. Some fans thought it was a joke. Others thought it was a mistake. But what happened next wasn't a joke, and it definitely wasn't a mistake. What happened next shocked the entire hockey world. This is the story of how a Zamboni driver became an NHL legend. If you believe that even the most ordinary people can have extraordinary moments, hit like and subscribe. Because what happened next wasn't just unlikely. It could have changed everything. In the NHL, there's no such thing as a meaningless game. Every point matters. Every win and every loss can make or break a season. Teams fight through 82 games just to grab a playoff spot, and one single loss in the wrong moment can send a team crashing out. So imagine this. You're the Carolina Hurricanes, right in the thick of a playoff race, playing against one of the league's biggest markets, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and both of your goalies go down, not in different games. In the same game, it was like something out of a nightmare. The backup goes in, he takes a hit, he goes down too, and now there's no one left, there's no third goalie, there's no backup plan. You can't delay the game. You can't forfeit. There's only one rule that applies here, and it's a rare one. Bring in the emergency backup goalie, and that's where things get wild. Because this wasn't some young kid from the farm team. It wasn't a guy who'd been training for this moment his whole life. The emergency backup that night was David Ayres, a man who literally worked at the arena. He drove the Zamboni. He helped out during practice. He wasn't a pro. He wasn't even close. He was just a guy who loved hockey and somehow found himself in a situation no fan, player, or coach could have seen coming. He also had one working kidney, thanks to a transplant he received from his mother years earlier. He had no contract, no spotlight, and no expectations. But in that moment, he was the only option. Now think about this from the NHL's side. The entire league, its image, its rules, its reputation was on the line. If David went out there and got destroyed, fans would tear the league apart. Media headlines would mock the system. People would question how the most famous hockey league in the world allowed a Zamboni driver to play in a real official game. And for the Hurricanes, if they lost because of this, it could ruin their playoff run. One loss could be the difference between making the playoffs or going home early. Millions of dollars were at stake. A season's worth of hard work was on the line. And standing in the crease was David Ayres. You could feel the tension in the building. Jokes turned into silence, smiles turned into concern, because this wasn't funny anymore. It was real. Fans didn't know what to expect. Players didn't know what to say, and David just pulled on the jersey, strapped on his pads, and stepped onto NHL ice. No excuses. No second thoughts. Whether it was pure courage, adrenaline, or just love for the game, he walked through the tunnel and into one of the wildest situations in hockey history. A 42-year-old building worker was now an NHL goaltender, and the whole world was watching to see what would happen next. David Ayres wasn't supposed to be anywhere near an NHL game. Not on the bench, not on the ice, and definitely not playing. He wasn't a professional athlete. He didn't have a big contract, a personal trainer, or a sports agent waiting by the phone. He was just a regular guy from a regular town. David grew up in Whitby, Ontario, a small working-class community just outside of Toronto. Life wasn't flashy, but it was honest. His family worked hard, and so did he. Like many Canadian kids, David fell in love with hockey at a young age. He played goalie, watched games on TV, and dreamed about one day wearing an NHL jersey. Not for fun, not for a moment. For real. He chased that dream for as long as he could. He played in junior leagues, put in the hours, took the hits, and stood tall in the net even when the odds weren't on his side. But the truth is, David wasn't a top prospect. He didn't have scouts knocking on his door. He didn't get drafted. And by the time he hit his 20s, the dream that once felt possible started slipping away. And then came the health scare that changed everything. At just 27 years old, David's body started to fail him. His kidney function was dangerously low. He was tired all the time. His body ached. Something was clearly wrong. After tests and doctor visits, the news came in he needed a kidney transplant. That's not something most athletes ever plan for. But David didn't have a choice. His mother, in an act of love only a parent could make, offered hers. And in 2004, she gave her son a second chance at life. The surgery went well, but his hockey career, that was finished. Or so it seemed. Most people would have moved on, found a desk job, stopped thinking about hockey, maybe gone to the rink now and then as a fan, but nothing more. But David wasn't built like that. Even after the transplant, even after his pro dreams were behind him, he stayed close to the game. He started helping out at the Mattamy Athletic Center in downtown Toronto, a rink with deep history. It used to be the old Maple Leaf Gardens, where legends played and banners hung from the ceiling. David worked behind the scenes, he fixed broken boards, made sure things ran smoothly, cleaned the ice with the Zamboni. He was the kind of person that made the game happen, even if fans never saw him. But every now and then, when the Maple Leafs needed an extra body in practice, someone to face shots when the regulars were resting, David would put on his old pads and step into the net. No headlines, no cameras, just him, the puck, and the feeling he never wanted to lose. He wasn't chasing the NHL anymore. He wasn't expecting anything. He just loved the game, and he found small ways to stay part of it. Every pass, every glove save in practice was a quiet reminder of what hockey meant to him. And even though most nights he was just the guy resurfacing the ice after a game, deep down he was still a goalie. Still the kid from Whitby who once believed he could make it. And somehow that belief never really left him. It was a cold February night in Toronto. A 10, the kind of night where you expect everything to go as planned. The stands were full. The Carolina Hurricanes were in town to face the Maple Leafs. The lights were bright. The players were focused. And David Ayres, he was doing what he always did, hanging around the rink, helping out if needed, and waiting for the final horn so he could drive the Zamboni. He had no reason to expect anything unusual. But then, in the middle of the second period, everything changed. Carolina's starting goalie took a hit. It didn't look good. Trainers rushed onto the ice. Moments later, he was being helped off and into the locker room. The backup goalie came in. Nothing out of the ordinary. That's what backups are for. But then just minutes later, the backup got hurt too. Now the Hurricanes had a problem. A serious one. They had no goalie left. No third option. No one else in uniform who could take over. The players looked around in confusion. The coaches talked to the officials. The crowd buzzed with rumors. What now? At first, people laughed. It didn't feel real. Some fans thought it was a joke. Others figured there would be some kind of special exception. Surely the NHL had a plan for this, right? Well, they did. And it was one of the most unusual rules in sports. Every NHL team is required to have an emergency backup goalie in the building. Someone who can suit up for either team if both regular goalies are out. It almost never happens. It's more of a formality, a safety net. But on this night, that safety net became the only option. And the emergency backup in the building was David Ayres. Suddenly the jokes stopped. The arena got quiet. People stared at the bench. Cameras looked for him. And backstage, someone turned to David and said, "Get ready." He had to be stunned. One minute, he was a nobody in the background. The next, someone was handing him a Carolina Hurricanes jersey with his name on it. Trainers were taping his ankles. Officials were checking his gear. He was being sent into a real NHL game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, the team he grew up watching, the team he still rooted for. His wife was in the crowd. She had no idea what was happening. His phone was probably blowing up in his locker. His mind must have been spinning, but still he got dressed. He didn't say no, he didn't freeze. He just took a deep breath, laced up his skates, and walked down the tunnel. And when the gate opened and David Ayres stepped onto that ice in front of nearly 20,000 people, it wasn't just a man replacing an injured goalie. It was a dream, walking straight into reality. David Ayres skated onto the ice in front of nearly 20,000 people. He'd been on this ice before, sure, but never like this. Never with a scoreboard that mattered. Never with real NHL players coming down the wing full speed trying to score. The lights were brighter. The crowd was louder. And the pressure. It was like nothing he'd ever felt. He was wearing a Carolina Hurricanes uniform, but deep down, he was still a Leafs fan. He had grown up watching this team. He even practiced with them sometimes, taking shots from these same players during morning skates. And now, he had to stop them in a live game on national television. And it didn't start well. The Leafs scored on their first 2 shots. 1 goal, then another, back to back. The building buzzed. Fans started to murmur. People watching at home were already writing the story in their heads. Zamboni driver gets lit up in an NHL game. It felt like the fairy tale was going to end before it even began. You couldn't blame him. He hadn't played at this level. Hadn't seen NHL shooters at full speed in years. It looked like it might get ugly. But that's when something changed. David didn't panic. He didn't fall apart. He didn't skate off. He just stood there, took a deep breath, and waited for the next play. And when it came, he made the save. A clean, simple stop. Then another. and another. The Hurricanes could feel it. So could the crowd. His teammates started playing tighter defense. They blocked shots. They cleared rebounds. On the bench, they were cheering him on. Between whistles, they talked to him, calmed him down, patted him on the pads. And somewhere in the third period, the mood completely shifted. Now, David Ayres was stopping everything. He was locking in. The Leafs couldn't get the puck past him. He was sliding post to post, tracking the puck, and playing like a man who belonged. Fans stopped laughing and started cheering. Broadcasters couldn't believe what they were watching. He was 42 years old, with a kidney transplant, and had spent the first half of the night working in the bowels of the arena. Now he was out playing NHL shooters under the brightest lights imaginable. And when the final buzzer sounded, the scoreboard told the story: Hurricanes 6, Maple Leafs 3. David Ayres had made 8 saves, let in no more goals after those first 2, and earned the win. He was the first emergency backup goalie in NHL history to ever get credit for a win. His teammates mobbed him. They swarmed the crease, helmets off, yelling his name. Some players hugged him. Others just stood there in disbelief. The fans in Toronto, his hometown fans, stood and gave him a standing ovation even though their team had lost. It felt like a Hollywood script, but it wasn't a movie. It was real. It happened. A guy who cleaned the ice had just beat one of the most popular teams in the NHL, and the entire world was watching. The moment the game ended, David Ayres' life changed forever. He wasn't just a rink worker anymore, he was an overnight sensation. News stations from all over Canada, the US, and even other countries wanted to talk to him. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Radio shows, podcasts, late night TV, everyone wanted a piece of the story. One day earlier, most hockey fans had never heard his name. Now he was everywhere. The Carolina Hurricanes embraced the moment too. They made special Ayres jerseys with the number 90 on the back, the number he wore that night. Fans bought them in huge numbers, and the team donated the profits to a kidney foundation. That meant the world to David. After all, without a kidney transplant, he wouldn't have even been alive, let alone playing hockey. He was invited to drop the puck at ceremonial face-offs. Kids lined up for his autograph. Parents told him he gave their children hope. And through it all, David stayed grounded. He didn't act like a star. He didn't try to cash in. He just smiled, took it all in, and stayed humble. His story meant something more than just a hockey game. It became a symbol, a reminder that you don't need to be famous or perfect or part of the system to live out a dream. He showed the world that even when life doesn't go the way you planned, it can still lead to something incredible. But not everyone saw it that way. Behind the scenes, NHL officials weren't so sure this was a feel-good story. They started asking tough questions. What if David had gotten hurt? What if he'd let in 10 goals? What if the Hurricanes had missed the playoffs because of it? Could the league really allow this to happen again? Because of that night, the NHL reviewed and quietly updated the emergency backup goalie rules. Teams were told to be better prepared and to have more structured options in place. The league didn't want to rely on miracles again, but for fans, that one night was unforgettable. Years later, people still talk about it. It's one of those moments that gets passed down. Hey, remember the time the Zamboni driver beat the Leafs? It's not just a trivia answer. It's a story of grit, heart, and something bigger than sports. And David Ayres didn't fade away. He used his story to help others. He started doing talks at schools and hospitals, especially for people going through kidney failure. He met with patients. He shared his story. He reminded them that no matter how hard life gets, no matter how unlikely things seem, something amazing could still be waiting around the corner. In a league full of millionaires, superstars, and highlight reel goals, it was the guy with a borrowed jersey and secondhand pads who gave us one of the purest, most magical nights in NHL history. David Ayres will always be remembered for that game. But his story goes way beyond hockey. It's about second chances. It's about staying close to the things you love, even when they feel far away. It's about showing up day after day, even when no one's watching. Because you never know when your moment will come. He didn't chase attention. He didn't ask for the spotlight. But when his name was called, he was ready. Not because he had all the training in the world, but because he never let the game go. He stayed close, stayed involved, kept believing, even if it was just a little bit. And when the dream finally found him, he answered. In the end, David went right back to what he loved, helping out at the rink, keeping the ice clean, chatting with staff, driving the Zamboni, the same guy doing the same job. But now, with a story that nobody will ever forget, a story that reminds us all. Sometimes the unlikeliest heroes give us the best moments. Thanks for watching. And if you like this video, we've got another one right here you'll love. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you that anything is possible, then go ahead and like the videos and then subscribe for more stories that prove it.